Helium One has spudded its Itumbula West One well in Tanzania. The drilling campaign has begun. To talk about this and about the company's prospects and its funding situation, we are joined by Lorna Blaisse, the chief executive. So, Lorna, drilling has begun. What are you hoping to find?
It has, Sarah. Yes, good news. Thankfully, we are back up and running. We're obviously hoping to find helium. I really hope that we do. The Itumbula prospect is enabling us to target a new play. So not only will we be drilling the conventional Karoo play as we've previously drilled at Tai, but we'll also be drilling into two faults that bound the prospect, and those two faults are really quite important to not just the prospect but also the basin as a whole. One of those faults is a deep-seated basement fault that goes right down into the basement rock, and it's down in the basement where we know that the helium is derived and sourced from, and it's very much our hope from the learnings that we've discovered through the drilling of the Tai 3 well, that as we drill closer to these faults and into them and fractures in the basement, that the helium picks up. The Itumbula prospect sits very close to the largest, the most active prolific helium seep in the basin. That seep itself has measured helium concentrations in excess of 10% in the past and historically, and that is very close to surface, coming close to another major bounding fault that's actually connected to the fault at Itumbula. So we're hopeful that as we drill through those faults, we might see some helium pick up and be liberated, and then we'll drill through the faults into the Karoo to target our second primary play type.
That's interesting you use the word liberated, because helium was liberated at Tai 3, and then you moved on, you packed up and you moved on and you went to Itumbula, which I can't even say, but you in the current location. Why didn't you just keep going at Tai 3?
Yeah, that's a good question. Unfortunately, a number of reasons behind that. Logic would state it would have made sense to have stayed and drilled deeper, and that would have been a obvious approach, especially with those helium shows picking up the deeper we drilled. So those reasons were multiple. Unfortunately, as we drilled into basement, the rig broke, which was very bad timing. At that point, the priority for the company and any exploration company is to get data from the well. A well without data is unfortunately valueless. So it was certainly my priority and the team's priority to evaluate the well with what we currently had. So at that point in time, with a broken rig, we needed to get the drill pipe out of the hole, which some of you will recall that took a number of days. That was incredibly frustrating, and there was a risk there that we would have lost the well. Fortunately, luck was on our side. We were able to recover the drill pipe, and as a result, we didn't need the broken piece of equipment, the iron roughneck, to do the wireline logging. We were able to log, we were able to run in hole with the RCI downhole sampling tool as well, and we were able to get that all important downhole sample. At that point in time, the data was in the bag, so to speak, and then there had to be a decision made as to whether we waited until we fixed the rig and then drilled deeper at that point. However, there was a big unknown then. We recognized that the failure with the iron roughneck was going to be more than a few days, and required a whole new piece of kit, and we had an open hole. Leaving the wellbore open for an unknown amount of time is never ideal. The risk there is that we would have lost the entire well, and then if we did want to come back and deepen it, we wouldn't have been able to. We would have had to have re-drilled. So there was a cost implication there as well. So obviously the decision at that point was to then secure the well. So we ran the 7-inch casing, and as a result of that, we were able to suspend and preserve the hole. Now, because that 7-inch casing was then run, at any point, every time you run a casing string, your hole size decreases. So subsequently 7-inch casing in the ground, if you drill out of that, you'd then be into a 6-inch hole. We never had that equipment at site. You know, we never carried that in our contingency. There's only so many contingencies that you can carry and afford to carry, and that in this scenario was not one of them. So in order to drill ahead at that time, well, notwithstanding the broken rig, we also, you know, we would have needed, so we physically couldn't drill ahead, but even if the rig wasn't broken, we didn't have the right equipment. You know, we didn't have the 6-inch drill bits, the drill pipe, the heavyweight drill pipe, crossovers, etc., to enable us to do that. And that equipment will take several months to order in, to procure, and obviously mobilize in country and to site. So the priority absolutely was to fix the rig. That had to be number one, and then not to sit around and wait for unknown equipment to come in. We had to move on to the second well. We'd already planned to drill a second well in the program and drill another prospect, and reduce any more lost time and cost overruns. So that's why the decision was made at the time. You know, it was internally, it was a straightforward decision because we knew that there were time constraints around that new equipment coming in, and we had to fix the rig. So, however, having said all that, you know, Thai 3 is suspended. It wasn't P&A'd. The well is secure. We've got the wellhead in place, and at some point we will return and deepen that well.
So rightly or wrongly, the company has become synonymous with rig disasters, malfunctioning bits of kit. Are you confident that the rig is operational, it's safe, it's secure, it's robust?
Yeah, I mean, look, we bought that rig at a time when we had very limited other options available to us, with the budget that we were working towards. The rig was and is fit for purpose. You know, it's drilled a well for us that's gone deeper than any well it's drilled before. It's more than capable. It's still within its limits of 2,400 meters, and we have a well with secured data from it. The rig is now fixed. We've replaced the entire iron roughneck system that's come in from the US, which is why it took as long as it did. It's been fully installed. It's working as we speak. We've just commenced re-drilling of the 17 or commenced drilling of the 17.5-inch hole after running that casing. And you know, like any piece of machinery, it's worked, it's used, it's put under pressure. I don't think anyone can sit here and say nothing will go wrong again, because unfortunately I nor anyone else can say that, but it's working, and that's the main thing. It's performing exactly as we would expect, and we will continue to do all of the relevant ongoing maintenance work that is required for a piece of equipment like this. And I'm still confident that it was the right purchase for Helium One, and we will certainly be using it going forward.
Okay, before we talk about what's going to happen for the rest of the year, we have to talk about what happened last December. There was a placing, you raised £6 million. It was oversubscribed. However, it was at a 72% discount. Now, I know that the statements at the time were saying it's absolutely necessary that we raise the funds for Itumbula to happen, but a 72% discount right at the end of the year. Lorna, I think you can understand why people were very upset.
Yeah, I mean, you know, incredibly frustrating. And I think whatever word I use in that sentence is not going to be the right word that the shareholders want to hear. It was certainly never our intention to raise so close to the end of the year. However, you know, coming back to the comments on Thai 3, you know, we had drilled that well. Everything was on site. We had all of the equipment, we had personnel. You know, we needed to get drilling again. Adding further delays was just not an option off the back of the delays that we had with that well. It wasn't just the breakdown of the iron roughneck, as shareholders will recall. You know, we had problems with the hydraulics as well, and the gearbox motor. on top of those issues with the rig, we also drilled the Tai-3 well a lot deeper than we had originally planned. That top basement came in several hundred meters deeper than prognosed. And unfortunately, as a result of that, there were significant cost overruns, both from the time aspect of deepening the well, and also the fact that we faced the rig problems and breakdowns that we did. At that point, along with other factors, we knew that we did have to seek additional financing and go out a raise again in order to complete the drilling program with a second well. And obviously, I and the company had gone out and said that this would be a 2-well campaign. Yes, it was late, and yes, it came very late in the year to complete, but we were constrained by certain terms at the time, which led us to sort of do that early announcement that we hadn't originally intended for, but unfortunately under AIM and MAR rules, that decision was taken away from us, and we were looking at a number of options. So, as I say, I don't think any use of words is necessarily going to help at this stage, but it was incredibly frustrating for a number of people, and I recognize, at least not the shareholders. And in terms of timing, we didn't rig down from Tai-3 until the 19th of November, and then obviously we then launched a fundraise and completed that fundraise three weeks later, and it was just very unfortunate that it happened when it did.
I'm just wondering how much, money you've got left, because you raised money in September, you've raised money in December. How long are these funds going to last for?
Yeah, I mean, I think like any exploration company, unfortunately, you're always bound by having to fundraise each time you're drilling. And by nature of exploration and drilling wells, there are often a number of unknowns that we can't always plan for. We are fully funded for this well. That recent raise has enabled us to not only spud but also to complete the drilling on Itumbula. And at the end of the year, although we could have started the drilling, we weren't in a position to complete it. So I'm very confident that we will get this job done. As I said about the rig, unfortunately, I cannot categorically say nothing will go wrong. I sincerely hope. I've had enough sleepless nights lying awake thinking about this rig, and it's in the best shape it can possibly be at this stage. And that's what we're focusing for. I mean, going forward, we talked about the deepening of the Tai-3 well. We'll perhaps come on to this at the end, but obviously any future work programs will inevitably require additional fundraising, but at this stage the focus is to complete this well and get this drilling campaign wrapped up.
So returning to the most recent RNS, it mentions that part relinquishment of a prospecting license. So in layman's terms, what does this mean for the company? Is it a return of funds, or you're no longer liable for any fees associated with the license? I haven't come across that before.
Yeah, Sarah, it's basically the latter. So exploration licenses in oil and gas and mining, you only really want to be licensing that area of land that it's deemed to be prospective. So beginning of last year, so the beginning of 2023, we went through another review of our licenses and the prospectivity there that was entailed in the Ayesi and Balangida region. That was off the back of a large regional gravity magnetic study that we had completed at the end of the previous year, and the results of that work enabled the technical team to review a number of our PLs, our prospecting licenses, to understand which ones may be more prospective and maybe less prospective or non-prospective. Like anything, the more data you have, the more you learn and the more you can apply. And it was always my aim to not be carrying license areas that were deemed non-prospective, because then that's at a cost to the company that's unnecessary. So we actually applied for this partial relinquishment last year. It does take a bit of time, unfortunately, but that has just been ratified, so hence we were in a position to announce it. But yeah, I mean, as per the RNS, it's based on that new data telling us or indicating to us areas that are perhaps not as prospective, and therefore not worth spending the money on to retain. So the license fees for the year were already paid last year, but it means now going forward we won't be renewing that portion of the license, and therefore won't be paying for it.
So I'm sorry to hear you've been having sleepless nights. Tends to go with the chief executive role package, unfortunately. But I'm just wondering what kind of support you're receiving, not necessarily mentally or from a welfare point of view, but what support are you receiving from major shareholders and institutional backers?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're obviously delighted with the support that we have received, especially potentially new investors that have put in at the recent raise. As I said earlier, I appreciate the level of frustration around those who have been in for longer, but they do continue to invest, those that have, and do still show an interest in the project. It's always nice on the morning of a positive RNS to get those supportive emails come in, which we do manage. So it's nice to hear that support when it's received.
Because of course you are approaching the first anniversary of being chief executive. How would you summarize your first 12 months?
Yes, thank you for reminding me of that, Sarah. I think it's certainly been a bit of a roller coaster. You know, there's been some very high highs. Equally, there's been some very low lows. You know, like any job yields at times. However, I've thoroughly enjoyed the last 12 months. The highs definitely speak for themselves. Obviously, the lows do as well, but overall, it's an exciting project. I get to work with a great team, and remain committed to seeing this drilling program through, and hopefully, seeing what this basement can yield to us.
Because I spoke to you a year ago and you outlined what you wanted to achieve, and you got the rig. So you got the rig, amongst other things. So I'm just wondering what the next 12 months will look like, when we take this entire conversation into consideration. What's the plan?
Yeah, no, we did get the rig, and that I recall when I started this role, that was certainly at the forefront of my thoughts, that we had to secure a well as a minimum for 2023, and in order to do that, we needed a rig. So absolutely, that took several months, but fortunately in July we were able to make that announcement, and of course in the September, a few months later, we did start the drilling campaign. So certainly there has been some, as I said, those highs have been the highs of the role. In terms of the next 12 months, we've got a number of options available, or open to us. We're always sort of thinking ahead, like any company should do, particularly in exploration. However, where we go next will be driven by the results of this second well, and again, despite the headaches it's caused a number of people, and the rig does still provide us with a huge amount of optionality. It's ours, we own it, we can use it, we can lease it. It's in the best state it has ever been now, because of the amount of work and upgrade work that's been put into it. So we're certainly, we have options, and we're certainly not ready to stop yet.
So are you going to be a 2-well operation? Is a third well on the horizon, or are you going to go back to tie 3?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I think any further exploration work will be governed by a further raise, and we'll know more in terms of where we would be heading in terms of another well or another drilling campaign once we've got the results of Itumbula West in.
And the ideal scenario, a discovery, I'm assuming.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely. I mean, I think we've all been waiting a long time for that. When the company was first set out, and the co-founders setting up the company off the back of the work that they had done with the academics in the basin. There's a huge amount of evidence here in Rukwa of the helium being there. Helium One plus other operators have been exploring now here a number of years, and obviously several wells have been drilled in the basin over the last couple of years, and we're all very keen to see that come to fruition. It's certainly, I think, as other helium operators have demonstrated around the world, it's not as straightforward as exploring for hydrocarbon gas. Helium does like to throw some surprises, and particularly pure helium. We're one of the few companies that is exploring for pure helium. There's no hydrocarbons here, not like the other helium explorers or the other producing fields that are producing in conjunction with hydrocarbon gas. We are a pure helium explorer, and we are trying to understand how this gas behaves in this basin. But yes, absolutely, obviously that anyone's hope and goals in an exploration company is to secure that discovery.
Many thanks, Lorna, Blaisse. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Sarah.